Hi and welcome to another episode. And what we've got here is the arcade joystick dual thingy yet again, part 3. Hopefully this is the last one. So what have we got? What have I done so far? Well, as you can see, everything's all done and dusted up on top. What we need to do is get inside. So let me open it up and show you. Okay, so here we are inside. Bit of a rat's nest, probably needs a bit of a dusting, but everything's wired up correctly and everything works. I've already tested it with the software. Now, on the main PCB, the iPack Ultimate, see I've got the tracker ball set up. Basically on the 5 volts you want your red wires, and for the x-axis, for me, it's been the yellow wire one that goes at the top. For some reason I've seen other people set it up the other way, but for me, default way round was for the yellow wire to be the x-axis and the other one to be the y-axis. That's how it works for me. And then for the right spinner, the second spinner, I have on here, and that's easily done because it's actually color coded. I have got some expansion cables on, basically pinned at one end and female at the other. What else? Oh yes, this thing, which is the GRS TOS switchable 4 to 8 way restrictor, and then it's also, of course, I bought the second kit as well, you can see there, because I needed 2 of them, and they're wired up as such, just like that, so that the cables just about reach. I'll show how to use the software for everything in a bit. And then for the other spinner, the first one, the first spinner, I've got this little PCB which it came with, and that's wired up as default. And basically that one by default will do the x-axis. And by the way, I'm saying x and y-axis, that's in reference to how it's controlled by the PC looking like it was a mouse. So that's how it does that. I've got a few cables sort of taped off to the side because they're not currently in use. As for the wiring, I came to realise that these microswitches, it's actually the second one down that you connect up to, and that's because you want NO, which is normally open. The other one is NC, normally closed. So yeah, everything's all nicely wired up now. As I say, I've got the USB hub, so it goes off to the bottom. Now I'm going to show you how to set up with the software, but before I do that, let's have a look at the sponsor. Way hey, it's PCBWay. They're a fully featured custom PCB service based in China. It doesn't matter if you're a hobbyist wanting a prototype or a company needing full-scale rollout. PCBWay have you covered. PCBWay have great services like PCB prototypes and PCB assembly. They also have other services to help you get your product ready for market. If you're just a hobbyist learning how to hold a soldering iron, PCBWay have a shared product page where you can put your circuits together. For those who dream about circuits, you can share your ideas here with them as well. All this starts for as little as $5 US. Check out PCBWay today by finding a link in the description down below. Oh yeah, before I actually show you the software, what I want to show you is that I've turned it all on now. It's actually just getting power. There is no plugs into the computer or anything. It's just getting power from a USB charger. And the reason I've done that is because I want to show you the button. Now by default this is blue and red. Basically at the moment by default it's in 8 mode. And it changes to red, because that's what I've got it set up to, for a 4 mode. And you may just see and why they sort of zoom zoom is because it's doing one at a time, just to prove the other one changes across as well. So that changes the gate from 4 to 8 or 8 to 4, whichever way you want it. By default I want 8 while 4, but that comes in handy for like 8 you'd want for like fighting games and such, and 4 you'd want for something like Pac-Man. But anyway, let's get across to the software. Okay, first we've got WinIPAC version 2 installed. Don't worry, as always, I'll put links in the description so you can go straight there. Now, what you'll see is that my Ultimate IO is already set up and everything like that. But there's a bit of a feature bug. I think it's about time it got updated, quite frankly. It's 2 years old, this app now. Basically, when you've got your spinner and your trackball done, it's not actually dragging in the data properly. It works perfectly fine. It does flash it correctly. It's just when it's reading the data back in again, when you're trying to mess around, you'll think, oh, what's going on? It's not quite done the spinner and it's not quite done the trackball. So what we need to do is go get the file. So click File, Open. You can see everything I've got installed, can't you? There we go. Arcade stick. And this is how I've truly zapped it. Now, I'll also figure out how to add this to the internet and you can grab it yourself. So you've got things set up the same way I have. Basically it's in keyboard mode, as you can see. And it's dead easy to do what you need to do. You figure out what needs to be set up and you click it. And then you can see it says 1 right, so it's player 1 right, and we want it on the keyboard to be the right arrow, and left, and up, and so on and so forth, to all the different keys that you want to have set for that particular thing. Now you'll see this one over here is a bit dotted because this is the IPAC shift button. By default it's actually on the start 1, but I've changed it so that it's over here on 1B, which I think I've got that set up as being pause or start or something like that on the gamepad, on the arcade stick. But what that does is you need to have it selected, and you only need the one done. You don't need loads of them. And what that does, as you may well see, that say like on player 1 button number 5, if I actually selected something from here, so if I pressed that button down, held that down and then pressed the other one, it would allow me to give that button a second command. So it might come in handy so that you want to go back and forwards to home pages, set up different settings, all those different things you might want to do. The other thing that you can do with having that shift button is that buttons 1 through 5 will give you a chance to change modes of the arcade joystick, or modes of the Ultimate thing, so that you can have keyboard, D input, X input, and also your bespoke, your user setup version of the input or X input. I think it's in that order, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll put a link to somewhere that does explain what that does, but that allows you so that if you want to have like X input in Windows, it'll show up as a Neo Geo gamepad. It's sort of kind of a shame really, because you end up not having as many fire buttons, but it might come in handy for something that you're trying to do, so that's why I'm telling you about it. And with that you can have basically you can go into that mode and it'll say down at the bottom here in the red, and then you can set up a bespoke setup for that as well. I'm not going to bore you showing everything because really it is point click point click point click. It's really monotonous setting it all up on the way that you want to do it, but my keyboard one is at least set up the way that I want to do it, and as I say, I'll leave a file on the internet so that you can grab it. And if you get a bit stuck, always come through to the Discord channel and I'll help you out there. What else can I say to you with this? Obviously you can give nicknames to things so that you maybe make it a bit easier for yourself of what you've got that set up as. So as in like, I don't know, button 3, you want that to be your, depending on how it's wired inside your arcade stick, but basically you might want that as your high-powered kick or something like that, you know. So, or maybe you've got 1, 2, 3 going across the top and you want it to be your high-powered punch. You could put a little bit of a nickname in there just to remind yourself for later on. I've actually left my note blank. I don't personally need it. Anyway, on to the next bit. You have your macros, and here what you can do, again, I'm not going to bore you showing you everything that you do, but basically you give it a name, and then you can select something, and you can add it and do something else and do something else. And then here, on here, for example, we'll just pretend we're going to put this as a shifted thing. We can slide all the way down at the bottom, because there's not more than just the alphabet and numbers and things. There's pretty much all the keys you need from a normal keyboard, but also right down at the bottom you've got your macros. So if your macro number 1, you could have it that say like you've got to send some kind of command through to some program that you want it to like do up, down, left, right, fire, to select something. Or even like for the Street Fighter thing, you know, the up, down, left, right, up, down, A, B, or whatever it is. I always forget what the command is for that, but you know what I'm talking about. You could add that in, and then you could have that as a macro, so that if you pressed and held that, it would automatically do it for you, instead of you having to physically do it. It could be all sent through a command. So those macros might come in handy. And then for the config, I highly recommend that you tag this one first and make sure you apply it, and that'll allow you to do what I said before about swapping backwards and forwards in this iPack shift stuff. You need that turned on so that you can swap in between. That's what seems to happen with it anyway. I know it says enable expansion interface, but that seems to work with that enabled. I may be wrong with that, but I seem to have had to enable that to be able to, before the shift thing actually works. If you know what that bit does, then let me know. There seems to be very little documentation kicking around for this Ultimate board, and what was around for the older versions is getting a bit long in the tooth and doesn't really explain everything. So if you know, let me know. And obviously if you're going to mess around and do the LEDs that the board can do, you need to turn that on as well when you've got the extra power. And for the switch debounce, again, not too sure what that means. I'm sorry I'm not really giving much information, but there really isn't like a manual with this. I find it a big shame that there isn't like an RTFM kicking around with this thing. As I said, it's a few years old now. If they've pinned it down on what they want to do, they could do with giving some documentation so that people can just get on with it instead of having to pull the internet to bits to try to figure out on what's what. Apart from that, you've got your file. You can save your file. You can import or export them as XML files. Otherwise it's just iPack files. As I say, I would actually save your file, especially if you're using the spinners or the trackball, because yeah, it doesn't import them correctly later on when you want to zapping it back again. You can do a firmware upgrade. It seems to be, basically it seems if you've ordered one since 2015, you've probably got the latest firmware anyway. Nothing new seems to have been brought out for quite some time. Or if it has, again, the link that I'll have in the description, I'll let you zap it, but be careful if you've got a board from before 2015, because that takes a different program to zap it and everything like that. Right, so that's that bit of software. I know I've skimmed over the top, but it really is setting up the way that you want. There's plenty of videos out there explaining what maybe the best settings are. I'm not going to sit through and bore you with all of that, because really, why do it when there's other people who've already done it? I'm not going to point a particular person, because everyone's got their own idea. So seriously, it's one of those suck it and see moments, really, of which one's going to be good for you. Right, so let's get on with the next bit of software. Oh, while I remember, the spinner, because it's the one on the right, I'm having it as player 2, this connection. I've actually set it to Y, because the first spinner is by default X. So if you just set it to Y, it'll go up and down the windows and the screen, and the one on the left will be default. There's nothing. That's not very good English. There is nothing for the X little PCB for the spinner to be programmed up. It's already done for you. So, which is kind of a shame, because it'd be nice if it was possible to just have a little program that you could pick if you wanted X or Y or something. Maybe there is a program, I couldn't find it. But the way that I've got it set up in here is that this is set to Y. So I just clicked that one and it selected everything else that needed to be automatically done. So anyway, as I say, next program. Okay, so this is for the TOS GRS switchable 4 to 8-way restrictor for SAN-wired joysticks, and also the other kit, of course, but basically you need the first one so that you get a little PCB. The way that you do, you grab all this software, which of course I'll put a link in the description. You press initialize, and then it'll drag in what it's been pre-programmed to do. Or you can do a factory reset, so let's do that. Just to prove this is the way that it's actually set up for the way that you get it, you can click save. So that's been zapped to the little PCB now, or flashed across. I've found I have to do nothing with all of these different things. But the 4-way, I want that to be red, because, well, basically I do. The 8-way, I want that to be black, so off as it were. And the keyboard, I've got no reason to put it in a keyboard mode anyway, so I'll have that as black as well. I've also got it so that it first starts up, it's in 8-way mode. You might want it to be set up in 4-way mode if you're always loading up Pac-Man. But the point is, you can set it up the way that you like. You can click move 4-way and move 8-way just to test that it's actually working remotely without having to keep pressing the button. I can hear it buzzing backwards and forwards. So it's actually in 8-way mode right now. I may even set this so that it's completely black, because obviously the buttons at the back, the button at the back, or I say buttons, it is 2 in 1. I know which one's which, and it's easy enough to figure out anyway if I've got it the wrong way around. But since by default I'm having it that it's 8-way, I know that one of the buttons is going to make a sound, and then obviously the other one's going to be the one that changes it back again. So you just keep pressing it until it's in the mode that you want. But I have got a red light shining at the back. It may well be that I find that annoying, as in maybe while I'm sat on the sofa on the TV, it may well be that it's reflecting off of the TV, and it won't be no fun. But I also know that for lots of people, the TVs may well be higher up than what you've got set up, because you've got it set up in a full-on arcade cabinet. Anyway, so let's save that. And that is how easy it is programming everything up. The hardest bit is with the other bit of software and figuring out if how you want all your keys. As I say, I will definitely upload the file for you to get somewhere, but you can mess around, have mouse buttons and all different things. It is just monotonous programming it up which way around you want. And if it turns out you've wired things up incorrectly inside, as in you haven't got, you've got button number 1 set to button number 2 for some silly reason inside your arcade stick. You get tired, you've had a few beers, All these things happen. The truth is that you can rectify it in here, instead of going back inside again and getting a bit OCD'd with the wires. Because once it's programmed up, you're probably going to just leave it the way it is. If you do get stuck, just come across to the Discord channel. Links are in the description. So's the Patreon stuff. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button. But as always, happy gaming.